Okay, welcome to the Ordinance Subcommittee meeting of February 13th, 5:30. Looks like we're all here. We do have minutes to approve, so we'll do those separately because I have to abstain from the first one. So, can you just give me the minutes and then make a motion, Councilor Zarrett?
Sure. Motion to approve the minutes from where was that? We have minutes.
January 8th.
January?
Yep,
Yeah, from
second.
January 8th. Thank you.
Second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? Okay, let's go with the second one.
And then a motion to approve the minutes from January 30th, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right.
So we'll move right into new business, and I think probably what people are maybe came for. Actually, before that, maybe I should. What's that? Sign-in sheet? I don't have an extra one. We can use the back of this. Is anybody here to talk about anything that's not on the agenda? So if you want, I can. On the agenda is reviewing the proposed multi-passenger bikes serving alcohol, review of on and off-street parking residents,
Sign in.
proposed changes, open consumption, alcohol and cannabis, and proposed zoning amendment, cannabis equity application. So if anybody wants to speak of anything that's not those things, now is the time to do so. Okay. So that brings us, I think what we'll start with is the parking issues. Now, I just want to be clear, something was shared online yesterday. When we have, the council has rules that are relatively new that when you submit a new item, you have to have supporting documentation, sample ordinances, other things in there. And as it spread around, people assumed that those things were, those samples, those starting points were things that we were going to approve. And I just want to be upfront and say that those were something that was attached that was similar to the subject and was not anything particular that we were looking to cookie cutter put in. So really what I did was I distilled the main issues around the reason I brought this to the committee on this piece of paper. And I'll just, say that really, one of the things that's important to remember is at this point in Easthampton, between November 1st and April 1st, there's no overnight parking on the street. That's the already part of the parking rules and regulations. But these have been brought to me by constituents, some questions, and I thought that it warranted a discussion. So specifically the questions that I thought should be discussed was basically, should parking be allowed without restriction in residential areas after April 1st? So 6 months of the year, no overnight parking. The other 6 months, do we just not have restrictions? And if we do, is there a timing of that? Is it, some people have to move their cars every 24 hours, or is there something that does not require a time restraint? The duration of on-street parking, so if I did leave the country and I wanted to park on the street, should somebody be able to park their car on a public way for weeks at a time? Right now, if it's not between April or November and April, someone could park their car on a public way for an extended period of time. Correct, Chief?
Yes.
Okay. So area of parking. This is one that some people were more concerned about. Should someone be able to be allowed to park in front of someone else's house on a regular basis, not their own property? Now for crosswalks and intersections, it's a 20-foot buffer where you can't park up to the intersection, 20 feet from the intersection. Should that be extended to driveways of people parking? So if you are parking in front of someone's house, should you be able to park right up to the edge of their driveway, which could potentially obstruct the view of someone trying to pull out of their driveway? In the case that cars are parked on the public way, on both sides of the road, obstructing traffic. So in some areas, if it's traffic rules and orders do not allow for people to park more than 12 inches from the curb, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But if you're parked 8 or 9 inches from the curb and you're on a narrow street and on the other side of the street someone's doing the same thing, that could potentially create an obstruction.
Which is enforceable.
which is important. But who would have to move? I guess is the question.
We would tow them both.
To them both. Okay.
Because we have to be able to get a fire apparatus.
You have to be able to get an emergency vehicle through. Okay. So if a car is parked in the road that causes significant impediment to other cars, so for example, if you're parked at the bottom of somebody else's driveway and they have to pull back out of their driveway and they're in your way, right now there's no recourse for that. I know that I have at least 2 different constituents that have to do a 3-point turn when they're pulling out of their driveway because of this specific issue. And then should there be an exemption in areas in town where they don't have access to a driveway, which could be apartments or other things. So those are the questions that I thought warranted at least an investigation into. And then the other piece of this was, parking in the front of residences. And so the questions around this was more about definitely nothing about paving or what type of surface people should be parking on. More of, is there something that we feel is acceptable for a percentage of someone's front yard that they use as a parking area. So that's one thing. I mean, it's one thing if you have a driveway and that driveway has an extension and you park 3 or 4 cars there. It's another thing if you have a driveway and you park cars in that driveway and then you park a car next to the driveway on your neighbor's property line, and then one on the other side and one on the other side, so you have cars all the way across the frontage of the property. We don't allow people to build structures on the front of their property, like sheds or things of that nature. So it just, to me, it kind of makes sense. Do we allow people to use the entire frontage of their property for parking? So that's one of the things I thought would make sense. The other one I mentioned, which is setbacks. Should you be able to park vehicles right on your neighbor's property line? Like when it's in the zoning, you have to have 3 feet from the property line to plant a bush. There's nothing about where you can park a car. And if the front yard is being used to park multiple vehicles, and that is something that we don't have an objection to, or if there's no problem with that, do we require people, if they can't get to those spots by pulling into their driveway, do we require them to put curb cuts? Because if right now, if you're driving, if most places have curbs, and if you're pulling multiple vehicles that means you're pulling over the curb. And do we require curb cuts? And if this is something, and right now there's no regulations around this, so these are just thoughts, and this is what I wanted to address as we came to this. But as with other zoning issues, if someone wants to do this, should we require them to get a permit? Like if they wanted to put another structure on their property, or that way there could be an open process and they would be able to, neighbors would be able to have a say, and that could be potentially, at least a more open process. So that was really all I wanted to accomplish through this. I guess I'd open it up to questions from counselors, or ideas or thoughts. And this is the first time we've discussed it, so.
Yeah. And we're gonna have to talk about it a lot more.
Yeah.
The things that I care about are the safety issue, getting apparatus down the street, not making sure that they're not blocked in any way. I care less about curb cuts. People want to drive over a curb and park their car, and that's on them. I don't think we should have to foot the bill to put in a curb cut. The thing about the parking in front of your house, I think I kind of want the cars to be registered.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to just create like this stacking of vehicles in front of your house.
They have to be now.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yeah, they do have to be registered. Yeah.
Sweet. I mean, it's an eyesore, but I don't know how much we want to police neighborhoods that way. Like, it's up to the neighborhood.
That one, it is a tricky one, and I wasn't sure. That's why I posed it as a question.
I feel like that's a neighborhood issue, and it should be solved at a neighborhood level. But if it can't be, then maybe, I don't know. It's kind of touchy. Because I haven't seen a lot of it, but you may live in areas where it's happening. It would drive me
There's been
crazy.
areas in Easthampton where there's been quite a bit of consternation around this particular issue.
But to the point,
Who's gonna enforce that? Is that gonna be zoning enforcement?
But that's, well, I guess, what we would discuss.
Yeah.
Right.
Before I open it up to the public,
I
Councilor,
mean,
do you have any?
I agree with most of Councilor Connor's sentiments. I mean, I think that to some degree, certain neighbors in certain neighborhoods could argue that parking multiple vehicles on the lawn could be an eyesore, but again, I think that's more of a matter of taste and less of a matter of public safety. I think one thing you did touch upon is the concept of setbacks, and I think for the most part, I heard a little bit about this. I think some people were talking about this online yesterday, maybe. That for the most part, I like people to have reasonable freedoms of what they do on their own property. But where it infringes on other people's property, I think is where we have to look at that. So in other words, if you have a neighbor who's parking multiple vehicles, and much like we have with structures, fencing, et cetera, on their lawn, on their property, if it in some way unduly infringes on your neighbor, I feel like there should be some guidelines around that. So creating setbacks. The other thing is, I think if we do undertake anything even remotely resembling this, it should be complaint driven. Obviously, we're not looking for people to go around and police how people park their cars for a variety of reasons. But I think that we should set up, if we're going to talk about this, there should at least be reasonable guidelines about, yes, you can park on your property, but again, much like with other structures, there should be some sort of reasonable egress or variance between the other neighbor's property, and potentially just leave it at that. I mean, Easthampton doesn't have a blight law. I don't necessarily know if I want to get into that. In regards to parking on the street, the only real public safety issue, again, I would have is in terms of access. I think that some people don't have driveways, so they have to park in the street. But I do think there is a gray area between whereas the street is a public way, if people are using the public way consistently for a private application, again, I don't know kind of how you reconcile that. But again, I think all of this should be complaint driven, and with very reasonable guidelines. That's
Fair enough. And Bob, as it currently stands, the no overnight parking during the November to April is probably relatively complaint driven, is that? Or is it, or do you, if you find somebody out overnight?
Unenforced.
Unenforced.
We don't get complaints on it, and we don't enforce it.
Okay.
Essentially, except for by snow being.
Alright, yeah, when a storm.
I will say that, and I haven't read this, so I'm assuming it's not even remotely in here, but I know it created a storm yesterday. There is no chance that I would ever sign on for anything that differentiated between improved property, like the gravel driveway, all that stuff.
No.
No, that's off the table.
Yeah, that's not
insanity.
the intention.
So, just if anyone was concerned.
Could you just speak to the overall of the process, like this is the first meeting on this, and
Yep.
what would happen? Some number of ideas would come together. Could you speak
Sure,
to-
just do me one favor first, and let us know your name and your address for the
Yes.
record.
Eric Luther, 228 Park Street.
Okay. So this is first meeting. I think what we're gonna do is look at these questions and bring the experts in, the planner, the police chief, our zoning enforcement officer, and see if there is any reasonable things in here that could potentially help the city or help people that are experiencing hardship currently. And if that does happen, then we would bring something forward, and that would be debated within committee first. And then from there, since it's zoning, it would have to go to the planning board. And then we would run concurrently with the planning board. We'd have a couple public hearings together. And then we would have a recommendation from the planning board, we'd have a recommendation from the subcommittee, it would go to the full council, and there'd be another public hearing. So this process is,
We're ways away.
Thank you so much.
and very, very open and transparent too. So, Okay. Anybody else have any?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there?
Name and.
Oh, sorry. Wes Hardy, 154 Hendrick Street. Is there already, and this is just my ignorance, is there already a limit to how far up to a driveway you can park, or no? There's no regulation
No,
whatsoever?
no regulation. No.
So you can park like right up to it, right?
On the driveway, you could have your entire driveway filled with.
No. I mean, so like,
On the street.
so this is the driveway, right? And then,
Oh, right.
this is the car, so that's the driveway. So someone can park like there, and the curb stops here?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm just trying to understand, because you said it was complaint driven, so
Yeah.
the idea is that people are having a problem getting out of their
Getting out of the driveway.
right? And so, the thing that, the paved thing, thanks for explaining that, but the other one that just kind of really bothers me is, should someone be allowed to park in front of someone else's house on a regular basis? I feel like that's like yes and yes 1,000 times. I feel like it's, if parking is allowed, it doesn't matter who is doing the parking where. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, right, it's, so like, that one I just feel like is kind of just a non-starter. But the safety portion of it, like, I mean, I recognize it makes sense if you're gonna have someone that's trying to back out into a busy street, but maybe it's because I live on Hendrick Street. I think it could be more about the speed that people travel on certain streets than necessarily your ability to view, because at least on Hendrick Street, it's like, I mean, it's kind of crazy. If I back out, I'm like triple check, because people just rip through nothing. There are plenty of tickets in Hendrick Street.
What you wish for.
That's fair enough, and I would say that it's another thing that you have to take into consideration is sightlines, because not all streets are straight and flat.
Right.
And so as streets get curved and have relief, that's where some things can get kind of tricky. So that's a question that was in there about
Right.
whether you can, and I think that it could be abused.
Right.
Because unless the street has no parking, then you can park anywhere. And if someone wanted to park their dilapidated, rusty RV in front of your house because they don't like you, and hey, and maybe you're just gonna have to deal with that. But I'm just
I would
wondering.
buy one just to do it.
Yeah, there you go.
But
There you
I
go.
mean, I'd get to it.
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
So for the driveway thing, where they're right on your driveway, park right next to your driveway, I'll speak to this because it's happened to me in my house.
Yeah.
I'm Chris Hay, 51 Mountain Avenue. So there's poker parties, and some of my neighbors have, and it gets pretty congested in there. Mount Top's not a very wide street.
Right.
And the issue was the guy was right on the corner of my driveway where I couldn't even turn to get out of my driveway. I
Right.
called the police department, they came out, they made the guy move.
Okay.
It was a simple, quick, did it hold me up a few minutes? Yes, absolutely, but the police department was very responsive. They came right out, they
good.
found out who the guy was, went to the poker party and said, move your car. And the guy
I like
came out and
this.
moved his car. So, well, I didn't know what I wasn't there, so that was what they said. So I think that we have a pretty responsive police department, and if there's situations that arise, I can also speak to cars in the yard. There's already an ordinance in town that says you can have one unregistered vehicle on your property, the rest of them have to be registered, or they can be on a trailer, I think. Is that correct?
No, they have to be out of view.
Out of view.
Out of sight.
So they can be
which
on a
is-
trailer covered,
Hold on.
I think.
Put a tarp
Yeah.
over it. And
That's what happened.
Yeah,
it's out of view, yeah.
But, I mean, it's within the guidelines of the ordinance, so there's really not a whole lot to do. So I think that there's procedures and zoning and coding that's in place. Most people don't realize that it's there. And like I say, the police department's very responsive. They'll come out, and if you call them, they'll come out and find out if they can solve it.
Sure.
So to piggyback on that, the issue becomes if they couldn't get a hold of the guy who won the car, now what do we do?
You mean on the street.
Yeah, that was blocking you in.
I mean,
But they wouldn't be able to
why
without.
is he
I
telling
mean, if he's on the driveway, you couldn't tell.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, well, I guess that could be one that needs to be looked at as far
But
as.
I think in that case, I think that for part of ordinance, in that case, you would, I think to Councilor Derby's point, intersections are 20 feet, crosswalks are
Right.
20 feet, so you
Right.
just couple driveways into
With
20
the
feet.
intersections, sure.
And then make it a restricted
Well, then
space.
that gives you the relief of if they can't
Exactly.
get a hold of you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
get rid of the
a
car. Sure,
relatively simple
sure.
fix.
And that
Yeah.
would make, I mean, those
Yeah.
are common sense.
Right,
things that
exactly.
make
But
sense.
that just, that's not something that you guys would be going around looking to enforce, right? The idea is that if you would need to, right?
In between 911 calls.
You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, like, because I'm just trying to think 20 feet back from each driveway, and there's some neighborhoods where if you took 20 feet to each
You're into the
driveway,
next
Oh, yeah.
driveway.
Mine's
there's,
one of them.
yeah,
Right.
there's nowhere to park.
Yeah.
And to Councilor Zara's point, that would be complaint driven. And,
okay.
you know, we've done this in Pleasant Street, not that I'm advocating we go through every city street and check driveways, but we collectively, I went down to Pleasant Street when we were redoing the parking ordinance, and it was okay to do it here, can't do it here, and it was actually written in such a manner. So, and you could list streets where the 20-foot rule doesn't apply, and streets that it would apply.
Councilor.
But that gets kind of dicey too.
Right, and to that end, I mean, for instance, in this discussion, is 20 feet too much, right? So right up
Right.
next to the driveway is too little.
Right.
And is 20 feet a lot, especially to what Mr. Hardy said, is that, right, so you're 20 feet back, you're in someone else's driveway, and you're just kind of doing, like, you're getting chased down between first and second. So, you know, is it a car length, right? Is it something a lot more, is it, right, yeah, so I mean.
and that's the kind of thing that we'll
Right.
investigate.
Right.
And I do want to say that, like, one of the things I did, and Councilor Conop's gonna love that I did this. I went through all of our streets and no parking, and which is pretty convoluted. And I would say,
It's very strange.
one of the things that was concerning to me was finding out that on South Street, that the only part of South Street there's no parking is like 150 feet from the intersection with Route 10. And if you've ever driven up the hill on South Street, if you had people parking on both sides of that street, which is currently not restricted, I think that you're looking for a major problem. So as we go through this, I think that this is going to be kind of an examination of areas where it makes sense to have, like South Street is the one that makes sense to have no parking on both sides. But I think that these are the questions that are going to kind of guide us. And now back to the property piece, I think, and what I'd like to look into is looking at, I feel that if someone decides to park on their property line, and is not being respectful of their neighbor, I feel like that's, as Councilor Zaret said, I feel like that can be impactful on the neighbor, could be impactful on property values, and I think it's something that, at the very least, we examine. Do we want, in residential areas, people's front yards to become parking lots? I don't say
They
that.
do
I don't
in
say
wintertime,
no.
in summer.
And wintertime is a different story
Yeah.
because you can't park on the street. It's a different
Right.
story.
Yeah.
But I'm saying year round, permanently. So that's kind of where I want to go with this. And so I'd be happy to entertain any other questions. Other than that, I'm just going to start doing research and have my fellow councilors. And the next time we meet, we'll have the city planner come in and just throw some ideas around.
I think what sparked the debate on
Oh, I know what it was.
well, people see Austin and then they start going out, we look at the Austin code and those are all neighborhood driven too, by the way, it looked
Yeah.
like to me.
Yeah.
Is if the neighborhoods had a problem, they offer like a little HOA of each neighborhood and they came together and said we want to be a parking enforced neighborhood.
Right.
So, and then with the planned or approved driveways where you put the concrete down and gravel's on steps and all that.
That was not the intention. That was more of like following council
That
rules
changed.
to have some things to start
Yeah,
discussing.
that chased pretty good.
Yeah.
I will tell you that when I read through it, I won't let you look at my notes, but everywhere I have nope. Nope.
Counselor.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. My goal as well, and I tried to address some of this while sticking without getting into open meeting law issues, is that, again, that was just an example, but for me, the way I legislate is we need to stick with the spirit of our city.
Right.
And the nature and the spirit of our city is that we have multiple properties that are either agricultural or in residential areas or rural residential areas where they either have dirt driveways, gravel driveways, no driveways, lawns. And so while I think there's very reasonable merit to this question, we have to address the question within the way that it works for our city and not as some accusations were that I may or may not have read, turn us into something else, right? We want to be Easthampton. So how can Easthampton address a problem that some residents came forward with to Councilor Derby
Right.
in a way that doesn't then also violate the rest of our residents' kind of innate, in nature to own their property, live on their property as they please. So.
Right. I'm curious, does anybody here have experience with like difficulty with people parking or? Yeah.
Actually, if I can,
Just-
can I ask,
just name-
I'm Andy Lathan, I'm on Westview Terrace. So, I have a neighbor, no problems with them, and I'm sure the police department's fully aware, because I know every one of my neighbors has called on them. But they have a number of ATVs, work trucks, trailers, and they park, they line them up on their lawn, they fill their driveway, they put in a shed in the backyard to park some of their vehicles. They also line them up along the road. I was out there with my little kids the other day, and the problem is that they don't have, all due respect to me, it has a Toyota Corolla, they don't have Toyota Corollas. They have really large pickup trucks, work vans, big vehicles, a Hummer. That's what lines the road. The problem with where my property sits is I'm also on a bend in the road, so your line of sight is difficult on that road. You should may know that bend right there on Westview Terrace. But with their large vehicles parked along their side of the road, people drive up and down and then swerve into, it turns into one lane essentially, and we almost got wrecked by a car that was driving way too fast, just because the driver had no choice. Should have been slower, but had no choice. The other thing is I have to do a 3-point turn every time I come out of my driveway in the morning, because my driveway comes around into the road, and the Hummers or the big pickup is parked right there. So I have to do a 3-point every time I come in, or I have to drive around the neighborhood to pull into my driveway because the trucks are so big. So I guess I kind of look at it as a safety issue too. Can that be, and I don't know if it can be determined, I mean, the blanket no parking in a residential neighborhood I don't think works for people either. We have a birthday party coming up and people will be lined up down my road, but I have them park in a different area, so it's safer. But can it be determined by kind of a case-by-case basis? I know it's complaint driven, and I know the local police department is probably done with, or annoyed with the complaints they're getting.
Never. Keep it going.
Between
So, but I mean, even last night I brought my neighbors across the street is elderly, and I spoke to her about doing a driveway in the morning, and I brought her some food last night. And I was walking back, and again, the trucks, even though there was a parking ban, they wait until they know the plow's coming. But I almost got hit again by someone who was forced to have to drive around that. So I don't know if it's, I think blanket statements are hard, but case-by-case basis, can certain areas be restricted to parking because of your line of sight, because of the type of neighborhood?
It can be, but it's got to be legislated.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say that the solution to that is just, instead of making explicit exclusions for you can't park here, 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 you just include kind of implicit language that, individuals may park their vehicle on public ways, such as not to unnecessarily impede the ingress or egress into neighboring driveways,
Right.
and allow safe line of sight for other vehicles or something of that sort.
Right.
And if I can just ask that, I also understand that in order to park a car on your lawn, on your driveway, really wherever, it has to be registered. Is that accurate?
But for one, yes.
But for one, okay. And is it the same for trailers and like a trailer that would carry a whole bunch of ATVs, and also a trailer that's used for storage on a lot?
No.
They don't have to be registered?
Right.
Okay.
If it's specific to registered
Car.
And then one more question about that. If they park the trailer on the road and back their car up to make it look like it's hitched to the trailer, even though it's not, and that's where they leave it. Really sneaky, but my direct line eyes.
Is the trailer registered?
They all have tags. I don't know that they're officially registered, but they're parked on the street, and then they back the truck up to make it look as if it's hitched. Very close.
Interesting.
Very clever.
Yeah.
Very smart.
It's a
And
case study.
here's the thing, they're fine neighbors, we get along with them well, they're great people, but it is, that one spot on the road is very dangerous if there's cars parked along that bend.
With regard to the parking ban in the snow, we get citizens, in order for us to tow in a parking ban, we don't have to wait for the plow truck to be on the
Right.
street calling it in. We have residents call all the time that somebody's violating the parking ban.
And they
And we go,
they were fine.
well, right, but we go out and tow those.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a stupid question? Did you ask them to move that?
Yeah, when my kids were a lot younger, I asked them to stop roaring their engines and stuff at night. They were totally fine with that. I asked them to move their trucks just so I can get out in the morning or maybe park.
It just sounds like you get along with them.
Yeah,
You
we
know what I
do.
mean? So like, if you could tell them like, dude, like I'm making a 3-point turn to like get in and out of my
Yeah.
driveway, like what, like.
Yeah, they
Maybe not.
last a night or two.
Yeah,
or a
maybe
morning
not.
or two,
Okay,
and
maybe
that's
not.
kind of it.
Alright, that's just.
You know, it's kind of the don't wake the bear
Yeah.
type of neighbor.
Yeah, okay.
We get along right now. But
We get along good, and that's
if they,
yeah.
if they
Okay.
were here, I probably wouldn't be saying all this.
Right,
We wouldn't
yeah.
get along.
It's recorded.
Yeah. I've been in a couple of these meetings before. So it's really, it's honestly for me, it's really visually it's awful, but it's more the safety thing on that area of the road. So that was my question.
Maybe they'll buy a bigger house with a big yard.
Ironically, they moved in 8 months after me. So I was hoping for that.
Enforcement wise, the timing of it, like you said, so someone would be allowed to park in someone else's house on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You'd have to put an amount of time, right, on
Yeah.
that. And then I feel like, I mean, you're gonna love this, right? You get a call, it's been parked there for 3 days, right? It's like, says who?
Well, I happen
We
to
get that all the time
know.
on Main Street.
I happen to know that our illustrious police department has little chalk sticks
Right.
that they can go mark tires with to see if a car has moved or not.
We want to parlay this into parking meters?
That's public safety. Public
Rock committee, rock committee.
And so I've
Don't tempt me.
I'm happy to entertain other questions. Otherwise, we do have a few other things on the agenda that I think would be good to get to. So, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Kathy Reno, as far as parking in the yard and things, I mean, some of us have, you know, when you bought the house, your kids are little, now they all drive and, you know, so, and there's no room to put a larger driveway, and some of us, you know,
I'm in the same boat.
so.
So I hear you, feel you. I think that's not what we're intending to do, is to restrict people from parking in the front yard at all. But like maybe looking at what are some reasonable boundaries. Like if you're parking in your front yard, should you be right on your neighbor's property line? You know, is there space for you to do that reasonably that's not disruptive? I think those are the questions that we'll ask.
You know, it's like, you know, yes, nobody wants to look at somebody who's got, you know, looks like a used car lot in front, but you also don't want to be told like you can't plant vegetables in your, you know, your yard
Right.
has to look, the grass is nice. and
Oh,
blah,
Sure,
blah,
yeah.
No.
Well, I've had people
So,
call me and
yeah,
ask to
but-
pass ordinances
One of
for
the
that too.
notes.
Any same color houses?
No, but I did, you know, and that is something. But you know, for example, like if you do want to plant shrubs on the side of your property, you have to be 3 feet from your neighbor's property
I
line.
only plant invasives.
So you know, so there are some
Right.
restrictions out there, and I think again, this is something that's complaint driven. You know,
Are
so-
there any restrictions about parking your cars on your property, property line wise, or no?
Not now.
Currently, no.
Currently, no.
That's one of the things we're looking at.
Yeah, that, I think that would be.
So, any other questions?
There's
Okay.
no restrictions about the number of chickens you own relative to the number of cars.
No,
There's a ratio we're gonna
There's
put
no
in.
ratio of
Okay.
chickens to cars yet,
Okay,
so
alright.
it's a good question. Well, thank you everybody for coming.
Thank
If you want to hear about the mobile pedal thing, feel free to stay. All right, so let's move on to the review
Thanks for
of
coming in.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good one, guys.
the multi-passenger bike serving alcohol. All right. So you did see that we submitted that as an agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take care. Okay. So now we can talk about it.
Great.
You know, so again, why don't you just state your name for the record and remind us of what your intentions are.
Okay, Nick Vatrin and Monica Roscotten of 127 Acrebrook in Chicopee. We're co-owners of this. She's more of the silent partner. And
I
our
bet not.
Not even-
Yeah.
The brains of the outfit.
yes, I'm just the pretty face, I guess. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to bring a BYOB solution to our bike. And what it is a 15-person pedal bike. Anyone here can look at the pictures if you haven't seen them already. I know this is a little old. There you go. It's a 15-passenger pedal bike where there's to have 2 tip certified employees in the middle. And what we're going to be doing is it said in the agenda serving alcohol.
Yeah.
And with BYOB, there's no such thing as serving alcohol. It's when people show up, they're going to have a certain amount of either wine or beer, and they're going to give it to our host. The host is going to put it in a cooler up above, and then just give them the beer to pour it in cups. They're not doing any pouring, nothing like that. Only reason for the host is to monitor everyone and observe and make sure everyone's safe and it's in a safe manner. This is practiced all over the country, and I read the Facebook forum as well on it, just like the reason why a lot of people were here earlier about it. And there's not one thing that anyone brought up that is detrimental to us, because we have solutions, or we're working on solutions to every single one of them, and we're looking forward to hearing your guys' input. And I also brought a waiver that we're gonna have everyone sign if BYOB does get passed, and our bike safety rules and regulation. Well, look at. Here's the rules and regulations.
And can you just remind us again where you would be, like, point of origin, point of termination?
So what we're really focused on is the bike trail, and
Okay.
the breweries along the bike trail, the mills, and here's and we're just trying to keep it as safe as possible. That's why we didn't really target Northampton per se, because there's not a lot of safety there. Like if you go like downtown, you have people speeding through. What we're really trying to do is we're looking at safety before anything. And so we're gonna go up and down the bike trail, either starting, so our main point of origin where this is garaged is the Delaney House. We have a big garage there, and what we're gonna try to incorporate there is people coming in from out of state or different cities to take bachelorette parties or corporate meetings, or just team building, skills building, whatever, just up Route 5 on the bike lane and then hop right onto the bike trail. And I know we've been on it 6 times, we've been down here 6 times, and there's gonna be a few times where people just start on the Route 5 entrance over there, or start down here in this parking lot, or the public parking lot over there. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring as many people as we can into downtown Easthampton in a safe manner while enjoying themselves.
And so it would terminate downtown Easthampton, so they don't ride it back.
So we're looking at all options right now.
Okay.
Our main point of origin would be the Delaney House, and we would bring them down here.
So
and
you
then
come down Route 5.
we
and
go
cross
Route
over.
5 bike lane,
Yep.
like we have, and then we cross right over, and we go down here, we terminate right down here in the safest spot necessary, and then we have a shuttle for them if they're starting from the Delaney House to bring them back, or so that waiver is a tentative waiver. We still have some editing and we have a lawyer looking at it, but we're also thinking of putting on the waiver that they have safe transportation home if it's not from the Delaney House where we're shuttling them. And we're also looking at options of starting here, bringing people to Fort Hill, and then back. And
Okay.
there's so much opportunity here.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask, was about when they finish the tour. You know, is there going to be a requirement for them to have an Uber or a designated driver or some sort of
Yep.
provision for that?
So when they book it, that's what we're really looking forward to, because we don't want people that have been drinking to drive.
Right.
No one does.
Right.
And with the shuttle, that's a really good convenience with the Delaney House, that we could just drive them back. But the other ones, we just want to make sure everyone gets home safely. And we might even do things that go down to
Fort Hill and back here to just bring them back to their general area where they were dropped off. So there's going to be themed rides. Not all of them are going to be drinking either. We've been thinking about early morning mental rides where you end with yoga around the park or stop at Tandem Bagel. So there's just a lot of opportunity. But for our business plan in the projections and all the people we talk to across the country, BYOB makes this successful. If you don't get it, you might be able to get by, but the BYOB makes it successful, and it brings out groups that they don't want to go out and get blackout drunk, but they want to have a beer or two, just like you and I do want to go out and have a beer after work. So it does draw attention to that, and we're excited to try to push it here, and it's finally nice to talk to you guys about it.
Yeah, we can talk. And councilors, any questions, thoughts? Councilor Connor.
So, I believe they have this in Minneapolis. I believe.
That's
or perhaps Green Bay, I'm not sure, but I have friends who have done it in that area, and they have a great time. And the differentiator there is it's Minneapolis and it's Green Bay. I personally, and I would need a lot more than what I have today, is I am not comfortable with this bike being on the bike path. I envision people on the bike path with their little earbuds in, listening to music, walking, doing whatever you do on the bike path, and this thing coming along and they can't hear it. And who's got the right of way, and do you want this big thing on the bike path where I'm just walking with my dog? Because I think that's what the bike path was meant for, was kind of communing with nature, walking your dog, walking with friends, being very quiet and calm and serene. And to have this thing coming down with a bunch of people who perhaps might be inebriated or on their way, I'm not a fan of it because of that. And you have a little ways to go to convince me that it will be safe. You keep using the word safe. In my head, I keep seeing entirely unsafe. And so just saying it's safe, you need to convince me beyond just your words.
Yeah.
And I'm not there yet.
And I completely understand that, and I respect your opinion on that. And me thinking the same way, if I'm from Easthampton and I enjoy walking my dog out there, that could be something. We brought it on the bike trail 6 times, and every single time, every single person that we passed wanted to know more about it and was excited. So what happens? This thing is not going more than 5 miles per hour.
Was it fully loaded with people?
Fully loaded. It does not go more than 5 miles per hour.
Okay.
And as we pull up to people, so it is, a lot of people are nervous about how it's 7 feet 2 inches. The wheel wells are 6 feet. So what we do is we overhang the grass side. And then if there's a larger group, we go on the grass. We've gone past people in wheelchairs. We've gone past people in rascal scooters, bikes. There were 2 people holding hands that walked side by side as we passed them. And we do have a horn if we do come up on someone. We're not going to be running people off the road. The driver is going to be completely sober, 100%, and they do have brakes and electric assist. So if we do have to come to a complete stop for any single reason, we do that.
Is music playing on this?
Music is playing lightly. So music, there's no music ban on the trail. And if you've been on the trail, you hear people play music multiple times. So what we're doing is on Route 5, and as we turn off the rail trail, we raise the music up a little bit. But the whole time, our music system is right in the middle in our storage area. And it points down. It doesn't shoot out, it points down for everyone to enjoy it. Yeah. So we do turn it down. We do respect the nature, and the reason why we brought it to Easthampton, 1, the bike trail is safe. 2, the bike trail has breweries on it. And 3, the bike trail is beautiful. It is beautiful. We're not trying to ruin other people's times. We're just bringing more people to Easthampton to enjoy how beautiful it is. And that's what we're
And
saying.
I think too, just like, is it okay if I?
Oh, yeah, please.
I don't know.
Do we know? Do we have a name yet?
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
Monica
Yeah.
Rossman.
Okay.
I think too, what like will really make us unique too, I know there's sometimes a lot of the party ones in different cities, is that we really want to bring a different aspect to it too, like corporate events where maybe there is like a nature incorporated theme where you can kind of go and bond with people and do like a mindfulness yoga thing. Like I'm a licensed mental health counselor, so I really want to bring in an overall wellness theme to it too, and birthday parties, or have like just fun themes in that too. And so we're really trying to work on different themes and tours and rides that we can like bring to make it a unique and fun, well-rounded experience for everybody.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. I have a long list of things.
Okay. So the difference between our bike and a bike downtown Nashville is downtown Nashville is a big time, look at me, we're blasting music, we have lights beaming off everywhere, we want to be seen. We're a bachelorette party, we're a bachelor party. We want people to look at us because we want to be the center of attention. Yes, we are a big object, and yes, we are going to have music and maybe some LED Christmas lights around and not things flashing in people's eyes. But there's we're not downtown. We're doing this for more of a group building thing. They're not going to be yelling at people behind them. They're not going to be yelling at other people on the trail. They're not going to be trying to get people on and off. It's a little different concept than that. And I really wanted to bring the bike tonight, but every single time we have one of these things,
How'd you get into
storm.
this room?
I was gonna bring it outside. But it's a little different concept. It's not. It's
We're
not
open to a road trip to go where it is.
Yeah. Hey, we have. But no, it's yes, everyone. There are a lot of people that look at it and like or dislike how it looks, I guess. But it's not a look at me thing. It's more of a hey, let's get a few buddies together. Let's go to a brewery. Let's have a good time.
Okay.
Councilor Sarah.
Thank you. I'm not unopposed to this concept, but I'm less prone to be interested in the BYOB concept and more prone to be interested in it as a method of transportation. And I also have a long ways to go to kind of wrap my head around our current open container laws and how we could in some way craft those really specifically for your business. Because there's really no one else approaching us right now to ask us to relax or amend the open container laws for this. So just to make that clear, I think this is a really cool concept. I think it clearly works well in other cities, like Nashville, for instance, and Minneapolis or Green Bay. I guess you can clarify
Somewhere
which one it is.
my
Somewhere where
friends
it's cold.
New Haven.
New Haven. And so some of my questions will speak to that. I really want to thank both of you for the interest in our city and bringing really a novel business here. And I don't want you to think I'm dismissing this out of hand. I'm just trying to be responsible in regards to my position and kind of my responsibility as an elected official to make sure that we're vetting this properly. So I don't necessarily expect you to answer all these questions right now, but I just wanted to kind of read off a list of questions that I wrote about this.
Settle in, people.
Well, I didn't bring the popcorn. I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. So we covered some of this. So I can print this out for you and send it to you. What's the precedent in other Massachusetts cities for this type of business? And is it operating anywhere in other places in Massachusetts? What's the precedent in other cities? We've kind of addressed this. Do they operate these vehicles on bike paths? Have cities that allow this type of business created ordinance for it, or was ordinance already in place that was friendly to this type of business? If this is successful, would such a large vehicle monopolize the bike path? In other words, if you were running like 10 trips a day, would that unnecessarily kind of clog up the bike path for people walking their dogs, holding hands, riding bikes, etc.? This is more of a philosophical question. Is the intention of the bike path, our bike path, to be purely for non-commercial use? Just private citizens enjoying time, being recreational, or is commercial use okay? Whereas going to a bar, brewery, outdoor event, etc., where alcohol is served, the public opts into these events, i.e. if I'm going to Food Truck Friday or Mill Pond Live or to one of the breweries in town, I'm consciously making that decision. But with the Pedal Tavern, there's no opt-in, and the public can be unwillingly exposed to alcohol consumption on public ways when it's certainly not their intention to do so or to expose their children or dogs, etc. So whereas a limousine or party bus, which currently does have, I would say this is kind of the parallel in our current container laws, those are enclosed vehicles. How do we explain the exception for a semi-open vehicle? And then most importantly, with other referendums, major public opinion, etc., those give us foundation to work with the craft legislation, the interest in the municipality. But how do we establish major public interest in a singular ordinance like this for uncharted territory? Should we ask for signatures for the public? Should we ask you to return to us with a petition from, say, you know, we do have kind of a model for this with something on our books, but should we ask for a certain percentage of voters who voted in the last election to give you signatures to express majority public interest in this? So those are my major ones.
2 weeks for the
One thing that does work against us, and it's in comparison to coach buses and limousines. It's, yeah, you're right. They are completely enclosed. But what's in a coach bus or limousine? It's a driver that's looking at the roads, looking at the mirrors, not staring at the people behind them drinking God knows what. What's great about us is we do have a driver that's looking at the roads, looking at the people ahead, looking at the person walking their dog, but then we have a person that is strictly staring at the people within, this close. They're walking in this path. And the way I look at it is that's closer than more bars. I managed the bar for 5 years, and I know sometimes there's tables in the corner that you look at once in a while and make sure everyone's good, but when you look away, you hope they're doing the right thing. Here, we know they're going to be doing the right thing, or they're off the bike. And we're not trying to cause trouble for Easthampton. That's the furthest thing we're trying to do. We're trying to bring a successful business here. And I think this could be a great success. The rail trail, I had meetings with the rail trail committee, and they understood everything. I gave them a presentation. They approved us on there, and that's what got us to order the bike. We did not own the bike before the rail trail committee approved it. We would not have ordered it if we were not approved, because this is a safe place that we really wanted to bring it. And since we've been on there, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Did they give you something in writing for their approval?
There's no exclusions to it. So they say, yes, we approve it, but we might revisit it next year. So, and that's what we're asking for here. Maybe there's different legislation or a suspension in the legislation where it says the city council can vote for suspension, or a paid permit, and then we revisit the permit every 6 months. I mean, we're seasonal, so we're not running during the winter time. So we can revisit it every year if we have to. We don't mind. And we are going to be working with the public. We don't want complaints. One complaint against a business, you see how far it goes on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I personally look at reviews, and if I see one complaint about it, I don't go to that restaurant. Even though if 100 people love it and one person says the food is terrible. But
So, Councilor Connor.
I think, and this could just be pontificating on my part, so I apologize.
No.
I think where we're at, both culturally and kind of, maybe just culturally, in this town, is we have, and a lot of the residents of this town have a very serious view of safety, which is a problem for a lot of the streets in our town. Recently, it's been horrific.
I see the flags.
And well, but that was born out of a death, and
Yeah.
and that's real.
Yeah.
And we're still trying to mitigate how to make our streets safer for their purpose, which is vehicles, motor vehicles. And so, for me, the timing could be off on this. Maybe 6 months ago or a year from now, it might be viewed differently. I think it's going to be tough to get through. I mean, I know you were at the council meeting the other day where Councilor Rist didn't even want it to come to subcommittee, which I don't agree with that philosophy. I think every issue kind of needs to be vetted. But I think it's a tough thing right now, and which is kind of funny because I totally would love to do this personally. This is right up my alley. But I have to your exactly. But I feel like we have to go beyond what we would personally want to do and think about the folks here in town, and I'm just not there yet, and maybe I need to see it in action, maybe I need to see it coming down the road, and you know, all of the bells and whistles on. I mean, I think that's something we absolutely should, I think we absolutely should.
I think we should.
I think we need to take a drive. But that, you know, could make a difference. I would think if we're going down this path, you would want to have the residents on your side, so I see a lot of free trips you'd have to make to get people to see what's going on and to get them on your side. But not sure where this will go, but that's just my, as I said, pontificating. Because I did not go to the great labor of writing up my 47 questions. This is right off the top
There
of
were
my
only
head.
46 questions to be
We're,
fair.
we're also up for any ideas or suggestions you guys have. And if the streets are that big of a problem, if going downtown is that big of a problem, we could drop them off right next to Tandem Bagel and turn right around.
Yeah.
If
It's for safety stuff.
if it's for safety and people not wanting to swerve around us, there's about 200 yards where people would have to slow down and wait for us to just turn off.
What would prohibit you from driving up Cottage Street now without coming before the city council?
Well, technically, it's a bicycle, and we just want to do things right. So go until you get caught, I guess.
That was a rhetorical question.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah.
We're,
Yeah,
I mean, because
Right, let's-
I mean, I think the only thing that we have, well, that's not true. We do have purview over setting regulations around the whole thing if we so chose, you know. But I think the main sticking point is the open consumption. I think that's really the elephant in the room, and I think that's probably, as we move forward, that's probably going to be the area where you find the most resistance. Like, I have a feeling that, you know, Councilor Rist and other councilors, if the open consumption, and I think what you're going to find is that the distaste for that is the fact that you don't opt into it. Is, you know, you're walking down the bike path with your little kids and there's people drinking going by you. And I think that, you know, they're not choosing to be exposed to that. It's just happening because they're there. And so, you know, I would say that knowing that is going to be your biggest crux, finding creative ways to think about that. And I don't know what those are, whether it's, you know, going to the breweries and doing the tour at the breweries, and then and for people that don't like beer, you know, having some sort of permission from the brewery to allow the consumption of wine or some. Okay, so
Yeah.
like I said, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know, but it's something to think about. How does that look?
Now, when I think of the open consumption laws, I mean, this is just my opinion. I think of just me going into the package store and just drinking a beer down the street. And is your open consumption laws so people don't see people drinking, or is it because you worry about the safety of people? So this is a little more than just a person walking down the bike trail and just popping open a beer
Right.
unmonitored.
Well, I think what you're going to find is that it's a combination of both, and that as people perceive this as a business that's being allowed to operate on the bike path, them seeing people drinking might be objectionable, and then you're also going to find that people might find it objectionable that people are drinking that could potentially, even though there's someone certified or whatever, you know, they're drinking more than they would if they had gone to just one brewery, and they're out in the, you know, downtown afterwards. So I think it's a combination of both. And like I said, there could be a creative way to approach this.
Wouldn't you want people downtown though?
Yes.
And here's another thing. Okay, so people don't want us on the bike path because it takes us 10 seconds to pass them as they're with their children. Would you rather us be driving down the street and holding up traffic?
You're doing an either or. I think you may find don't even come into town
Yeah.
as a scenario.
Yeah, no,
like it. When you put those two options,
Well, I know,
certainly the bike
this
path's
is just
better.
me.
But yeah, no, I'm with you. Yeah, I think this is gonna be tricky, and I actually am not uber concerned about the open consumption, because we can legislate around that.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you might be, which I can totally understand.
Well, it depends on what you legislate, council.
Free for all. I'm more I guess in my head, I'm more worried about just the perception of, you know, we don't have a lot of places that are kind of nice to go. You know, we love our mountain and we love our bike trails and we want to build more bike trails. And I feel like that would ruin the experience for the walkers and the bikers and the rest of the folks. Not that it actually would, but the perception would be that it would encroach a little bit, all for the sake of alcohol, which, you know,
Well, I
might
mean,
be a great reason.
we're already approved, so alcohol or no alcohol, we can go out with non-alcoholic refreshments and Danishes
Yeah.
right now, and people will be going by people.
Approved by whom?
The rail trail committee.
To do it without open
Just,
consumption.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna
Just to
step on it.
clarify, it doesn't sound like they necessarily gave you a letter of approval. They merely said that there wasn't anything preventing you from doing it. Is that a fair statement?
They didn't have anything codified that said you can't have a 15-person bike
Yeah.
down the bike trail.
Right, but not consuming is saying.
It's not on the rail trail, still public property.
Right.
So you're
Yeah.
running a business on public property.
Right,
essentially.
so that's my question about that
It's
as
the
well.
equivalent of the paddle boat folks. They're running a business on public property, but they're leasing the property.
Leasing.
Right, so would there have to be a license involved, right? That goes to
Well, and one of my, if I may,
Please.
Absolutely.
Please.
one of my concerns or one of my questions, not even from an enforcement standpoint yet, is we're going to legislate specifically to one business to utilize public property with no benefit to the city. No fiduciary benefit to the city. I know you're gonna jump on me and tell me that you're bringing people to town, and I get that. I also have marijuana, cannabis establishments bringing people to town as well. And there are state laws, and we covered this in nauseam with our bike ordinances, that cover moving over and allowing the pass. You may have a problem doing that on Cottage Street, which could get you jammed up too. So that's just my quick peripheral of it. I would also say that I will be attending any legislative subcommittee meetings around the open container ordinance, because we the police fought hard to get that back on the books for a variety of reasons. But we've had problems extensively in the past with open container in downtown, and without the resources of having the ordinance to do something about it. And then I dovetail that into, we're going to make an exception for you, then to the next, and then to Councilor Khan's point, it'll be a free-for-all.
And I completely understand that, and that's why I'd like to sit down and hear more suggestions from you. And something that I also heard earlier is people are afraid of inebriated people just coming downtown and doing whatever. So on our bike safety rules and regulations, we wrote no more than 60 ounces of beer, 750 milliliters of wine. We can delegate that however you guys think. And if they leave the seat, they can't have a can, bottle, glass, anything in their hand. So they're not physically not physically in public. It's a hard area.
And the licensing board wouldn't have any purview because they're not a fixed establishment, right?
Well, that's our problem. By them doing bring your own, we have no regulations. We have no jurisdiction. We are working on doing our own ordinances about that, but it's not created yet. My concern is without being licensed by the licensing board, there is nothing that they can really get in trouble for. They served a minor. We have nothing to hang our hat on. We can't have to close down business for 3 days. There is nothing that we can punish them with by disobeying any regulation that the ABCC has, because they're not even applying to the ABCC for a liquor license, which is a big concern to us, that there's nothing jurisdictional over them at all,
And I-
other than them saying, we have this list of, rules and regulations. And I have a problem with you have however many, 16 people having a really good time. Are you gonna tell them halfway through the trip, okay, no more alcohol? You're gonna have 16 very unhappy people then. What are they gonna do? Get off the bike and walk into now walk down the bike path to the first place they can find? It's a big concern for the licensing board, but they're not coming before the licensing board. So we can't put anything on them. We can only say to you, these are our concerns. I mean, and right now, we are at such a big growth rate here in Easthampton. We have given out all of our liquor licenses, being wine and malt, all liquor licenses. We have now had to request from the legislation more licenses because we have like a waiting period. We have so many restaurants coming in to open up. So, I mean, we have a growth. There's nobody waiting for, they're waiting for liquor licenses. But all of these other places, these establishments have to go by all the rules and regulations. And they're coming before us and saying, okay, we don't have to go by your rules and regulations because we're gonna get around it by letting people bring their own. And it's a big concern to us.
I'm gonna have Councilor Zarrett.
So I'll piggyback off of that first of all by saying that yes, I mean, I think before we could even consider operating a business like this in the city, we'd have to work with the licensing board to create basically BYOB laws.
Yeah.
And then it becomes even more complicated because this isn't a fixed business, but I guess you could define any business as the area in which it operates or something like that to get around, to be friendly towards something creative like this that's mobile. I would also echo a couple of Chief Alberti's concerns that again, and what I said earlier is, should we ask basically a paid for participation, a commercial business to basically, that's making money off of our public ways to create some sort of, should you have to basically lease the space from us, right? Is that what you were getting at in regards to the final votes? And as well as I agree with what you're saying too, that right now we do have, we recently went through amending our bike ordinance, and there's language in there about moving over, but if you're first of all, most of us perceive a bicycle as it's either a single or dual, a tandem bike, maybe with a trailer. But this is technically a bicycle, I think, but it's way bigger than anything we traditionally consider a bicycle. And can it safely move out of the way? Then the other thing I touched upon is public buy-in. So we've dealt with a lot of things here recently where, again, we've had a vote of some sort, or we've had to be pretty clear that there's a majority public interest in it, and we create rules around that. With this, again, we don't have that, and so I would entertain to this committee is, should we ask them as part of the steps for even considering this, come back with a petition of some sort, or signatures of residents expressing interest in the business, A, in the business in general, and B, specifically really in the BYOB issue.
I think that's an interesting concept. I worry that gives implicit expectation that we would go forward if enough people sign this petition. That would give the illusion that we're on board with this. What if we get 1,000 people who sign it and then we still deliberate it and go, yeah, we're not doing that?
Well, I mean, one thing I could speak to now that we're dealing with is that the way that the laws are currently written for social consumption, which is what we're dealing with cannabis, is that you have to collect a certain amount of signatures, at least the way that the GL is written, just to be even considered for a ballot measure. So it's more it would be more signatures for consideration rather than signatures. I understand what you're saying though too.
I mean.
Well, and I think, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, you go.
I think, we do have to just be mindful. Are we putting a particular business under undue hardship that other businesses don't necessarily have to go through? I don't want to get into any commerce issues.
I agree. I'm just being creative.
And I appreciate that. I think, I understand absolutely where you're coming from. I think it's a way to show that the community supports it. And I don't, and I don't know that. Well, as it stands right now, they can use the bike path and just not do both. They could do brewery tours and whatnot without any regulation from us, without any sort of change to anything. It seems like.
They just can't drink on it, but they
Just can't
can
drink on
ride
it.
it.
Right. Yeah. So this is a tough one. Yeah, go ahead.
Have you guys had any complaints about us at all? Because we've passed easily over 100 people.
I have not
and-
received any complaints.
And we've seen people that look like professional bikers all the way to people that are walking with their grandchildren, or we've seen 6 dogs out there with one person. So that's just a question.
Yeah, I haven't received any complaints.
And then back to your statement. If 16 people get off the bike when we say, guys, you've had enough alcohol, and it's time to go, and they go into another bar, the reason why we're shutting them off is because our tip certified person has observed that they cannot have any more to drink. So if 16 people leave Amy's place all cut off and go over to Luther's, is that going to be a problem? So I'm not trying to like.
Well, it would be, because then they're pulling their license.
Yeah, I have some, or the.
Well, I know that, but
Together.
at Luther's, it's their job to say, sorry
Well,
guys.
no, it's the bartender's job to call the police department and say, I just cut 16 people off and they're walking into another bar.
Yeah.
That is that bartender's responsibility to do.
course.
So
And-
that would be your bike person's
So
responsibility.
the 16 people you dump off at the bike path,
No, but
they're my responsibility.
we're also like I said before, we're not trying to get people inebriated. I'm just saying one, two, three drinks tops. Like it's not gonna do that.
Well, and there was one other thing that I wanted to just kind of at least talk about it briefly, and that is the using a public resource for commerce. And I guess it's a little bit harder for me because I feel like anybody that drives down the road for business is using the commons for their business. But we do have taxis that have to be licensed to the city. We did lease the pond. For me, people that drive down the street delivering newspapers, they're getting paid for those newspapers. They're using our streets.
Uber.
It's Uber. It's kind of hard to draw that line.
Drink on curb.
But not.
It's not as hard for me because that is the intent of what the road was built for, motor vehicles. The fact that they are using the road and providing commerce in a way that is consistent with the use of that pavement is pretty clear cut to me.
Okay.
This is a very different vehicle, there's one of a kind, and you're using a public way and having open alcohol. There's a lot of ands.
Right.
That,
So we'd have to.
It's different.
And I'm not opposed to considering that. We do have. I think there's a pedal popsicle cart. There's right. Am I imagining that?
I
They
think she
park
has
it.
a bike. The Crooked Pops. Does she have a?
Yeah. It's
yeah.
like a bike, and then I'm pretty sure there's a bike that has pastries on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
I gotta go to my office.
But it's, again, one-to-one.
I think that's also how they use it to get to and from. I think that you both make valid points,
Yeah.
right? So you make a good valid point that yes, why can you have taxi cabs and all these other things and delivery vehicles, but Councilor Conniff also makes a valid point is that that's on the roadway. We don't really have a great example of people using the bike path for commerce, right? So, and that's more of my question. I'm not saying
Yeah.
not to do that. It's just like a completely a lot of this is uncharted territory, that's part of
Right.
the problem.
To point out, the popsicle stick lady, and they are governed by the Board of Health. They pay a permit to them.
Okay.
So there is somebody that watches over them.
Oh yeah, we're okay with permits.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm just, there is
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
that watches
Interesting.
them. What do you do about people having to stop to go to the bathroom?
That's a great question, and that's something that we saw immediately on the Facebook forum. So we've been doing our diligence, and there's businesses along the route, and we've been talking to a few businesses to put a porta potty in their parking lot. So we can stop. It's gonna be a locked porta potty in their parking lot, so we could stop there, so no one's peeing along the trail.
It's good because we have a public urination ordinance as well. We did it right at the same time, remember? Right
I
at
have
the same time as the
I have a
public.
map given to me by Palmer Paving.
And there's some great state laws that cover that.
Well, that's sex
Here's a map.
offender.
Here's a map by Palmer Paving, and they showed me all the businesses that are right there. So I knocked on every one of the businesses' doors.
It's an important thing to have.
Yeah, yeah. Right. So
Yeah.
So we're in talks with them, and regardless that we are probably gonna do that porta potty anyway, because if we're serving sodas, people are still gonna have to pee.
Right.
So we don't want public urination. We're not looking for complaints here. We're trying to do everything by the book.
No,
I think you're gonna get the strongest pushback from the youth organizations. I mean, they actually had a bar here in town change their name because they were so upset that it was so closely sounding to the high school's whatever team it is there. I mean, that they had to come back before the licensing board and change their name.
So when we invite them out for a non-alcoholic tour, maybe we can change their minds there.
Well, that you're gonna have a tough time with them, because they are very strong in this town, and
Yeah.
they are very boisterous. They come before the licensing board all the time when they have a concern.
Well, that's why I started with you guys and wanted to put everything in motion.
So let's, I think, we have some good information, some good, at least things to do some research on, start thinking about. And I think we're just gonna keep doing our due diligence, and, we'll let you know, as we make some progress, and, I'm not sure if we're gonna have anything for the next meeting necessarily to report, but, I think we'll keep working on it, and
I am very interested in seeing the vehicle
Absolutely. Yeah,
and
I think
seeing
that
it.
makes sense,
You know,
too.
and I know it sounds kind of silly, but I kind of would like to see it in motion.
in motion on the bike
Yeah.
trail,
Yeah.
which,
And how it works.
we'll have to see some melt, maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, not next week.
We were hoping this snow didn't happen yesterday.
Yeah,
so-
because it probably could have gotten
Yeah.
out on it, yeah.
But we'd love to show you.
Good.
Right when it melts, we were gonna trailer it to the parking lot. We could even trailer it to the station so we can all look at it.
Yeah, well, I think maybe when we, get a little bit of snow melt, maybe we can do that.
Yeah.
We'll schedule that with you.
Okay.
And, well, thanks for coming.
Sweet.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
appreciate it.
Okay, so we still have other,
No,
Owen, why not?
Well, I mean, do you want, I mean,
It's up to you, my friend. I mean, these are
I mean, so,
like, if you
I'm
want,
going to table is what
oh, okay.
or continue it, you mean?
I- Continue.
Well,
yeah.
so here's what I'll
Go
say
ahead,
is
go
that so it was brought to my attention that regarding cannabis open container that we're still waiting on the CCC's decision about social consumption and what that might look like, and whether there's gonna be inherent changes to the rules and regulations around all sorts of things there. So
Right.
I think that while I think
Thank you.
the intention around that is still really important, that we may need to table that until
the
we
regulations
have
come
more
out.
information.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, just to
Alright.
say not duplicated.
And have we had a lot of issues with that yet?
No, but we probably don't also have issues with alcohol, with the full alcohol.
No,
containers
well,
either,
not this
yeah.
time of year.
But what I would like to, well, sorry, did you?
No, I was just gonna say that I agree with the council there that it doesn't make I mean, it makes good sense to write something, but it doesn't make sense to write something and then have the CCC come out with their regulations.
You have to
and
rewrite it.
rewrite something.
Mhm.
Right,
Yeah.
that makes sense, that does make sense.
But I do think it's important, so, I mean, just for housekeeping in regards to our alcohol open container law, two things. One is that some of the language was outdated.
Yes.
I think the fines were potentially outdated.
You're gonna say font.
Well,
Really?
the font was
That's what we're
outdated,
down
everything was
Okay.
done in Helvetica, and this is Times New Roman.
I was hoping we could get with Georgia.
Well, see, we could deliberate over that. We did not have, we didn't have a local vehicle open container law, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, and so,
I
right, so
have that,
okay,
right?
so Chief, please explain to me how that works. If we have, because I know that there's an open container law in vehicles, and you can pull people over and you can arrest people, and right?
No.
You can't pull. What, come on, you can pull people over
I
for
can hold a
open
beer
container.
like that driving down the street.
You can pull me over if
So
I'm not wearing a
dirty.
seatbelt now, right?
No.
I thought that went into effect.
Right past your house, that's what I'm gonna do.
No, that's a secondary offense. Even.
I thought they made a primary. I thought that was Governor Baker's thing when he first came in. No? Oh my God, I'm so confused.
No.
But anyway, so
There's a state civil fine for open container. in a
okay,
vehicle.
okay, and so if we created a local open vehicle, oh, thinking of bikes, open container for vehicles, would the person be subject to the local fine and the state fine?
So it's very much like your speeding ordinances. The speeding ordinance, the officer has the discretion to either write under the city ordinance, which all the funding comes back to the city,
Right.
or the state law, where the city gets a percentage, and the state gets a percentage.
Oh, interesting. So if you found someone with an open container, imagine that's arrestable, right?
In a vehicle.
In a vehicle.
No, it's a $350
Really?
I mean, you're gonna have a whole array of other issues.
Right.
With field sobriety, and,
Sure. Okay.
but yeah, it's just a civil fine.
And that would go to the state.
Correct.
And so if we had a local one, then we could write it under the local, and it would all come to Easthampton.
Correct. And I think the nature of what Councilor Zaret's writing is mirroring the state law, but like the speeding laws by way of ordinance, although they mirror each other, funding would stay in town as opposed to going out of town. And it's a good opportunity to start looking at the open container with cannabis, because obviously the parallels are there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just really the only hang-up that I would say, don't act on this now. It's just, we don't know what the CCC is going to regulate yet.
Right. Okay. Continue, Councilor Zare.
Yeah,
sorry,
so
sorry to
basi-
interrupt.
no, I mean, I think you asked valid questions, and especially the kind of the double jeopardy questions
Right.
important, obviously. But, so, I had introduced this language a while ago. Basically, it just updates the name of some of our parks, but it does also introduce the Section D, which is essentially open container in vehicle law with a fine up to $500, which actually sounds more than the state, so that's something we can deliberate on.
Okay.
Although to me it sounds.
I might have it confused. It might be 5 hours. I might be thinking of cannabis.
Okay.
And it puts the enforcement in the hands of our local law enforcement.
It puts the money in
and
the
it also
hands,
puts
too.
the money. I mean, to some degree, I mean, if people are breaking laws in our city,
And we're enforcing it.
then you can break that down all sorts of ways. The money should be going to our city and
I
not
agree.
to some fat
Is
cat.
it-
boss.
I agree
Is
100%.
it different if they're on a state road? Do you have to use the state? No?
Those are same ours. No, but that's just as it relates to state law. But that's why cities like Hoyle, like their ordinance book is 3 miles long because they recognize themselves.
They want to have all the money go back to the city. I'm
Let's rewrite them all.
fully in agreement with that. I think that you guys are doing the work. We should be
For
able
this
to.
committee, you should just if you have some spare time, go on Hoyle's city website, check out their ordinances. It's mind-boggling. They actually have an ordinance officer that his only function in life is enforcing ordinances.
Wow. Wow. We are not there yet.
No.
But you'd be the guy.
No.
So the other thing that I did with the cannabis open container is I added something about consumption near schools and daycares, because I think that one thing that we heard a little bit around some of the debate with cannabis was that the concerns were really not about what people were purchasing, it was what they were doing with it once they purchased it. And so I kind of built in this higher fine schedule for consumption basically within our buffer zone, which is 350 feet.
What I like about that, if I can interject, is we're making like gentlemen agreements, for lack of a better word, with these cannabis retailers. That if somebody, like, what are you gonna do if somebody's gonna start using in line, or they're gonna call us and we're gonna say, well, we can write a fine. But we have these agreements dealing with INSA that they'll automatically trespass somebody, which will give us the latitude to remove them. So I think what Councilor Zaret is proposing is a stiff fine, which they're not potentially not going to pay, but conversely, we could still have a conversation with those retailers that trespass them.
So here's my only issue with the 350 feet.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're gonna say. You said this before. Go ahead.
Well,
and I think he's going to give you the good answer.
like, okay, let's just say
As an
I'm walking
example.
down the street and I decide to be disrespectful and break the law and smoke a joint as I'm passing.
Or drink a beer.
Drink a beer.
Alcohol in this case.
Either.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm walking by Maple School
Mhm.
on my way to another location.
Mm-hmm.
When I get stopped, I am further than 350 feet. Or I'm 349 feet. How?
That speaks to reasonableness. I mean,
Okay.
if you're drinking a beer, you're potentially going to go to jail anyway,
Right.
Whether you're near the school or not.
Okay.
In this legislative draft, reasonableness would apply.
Okay.
Because
So-
when you get stopped, because the argument is, let's say you do get charged or you're not paying a fine, you go to appeal it, you're going to bring in a map, show
Where you-
whoever's ruling on it where you're standing, where the police officers are.
Right.
And that's what's going to rule today. Not
Right, and I can see this, like, someone sitting at the playground at Maple,
exactly.
after hour. So here's,
It's like dealing drugs, right?
right, it's like the school zone,
Mhm.
I get that.
Yep.
And I think that this is probably meant to be more of a deterrent. I guess, so that was one of my concerns. My other concern is, we do have daycares and schools that are in residential areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you have the potential to set somebody up on their own property to be subject to a local fine that's pretty stiff for them doing something that's perfectly legal.
Well, it's
on-
private property.
on their property.
They're on private property. They're on private property though.
I
It's not
know.
public way.
I was just saying public
It's just
way.
on public ways.
Just on public ways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in Councilor Zaret, in his due diligence, we did have some discussion about private property consumption too. And clearly, it was decided that it's private property. Although,
The public has
Yeah, I mean,
the
if you're
right
on your
of
lawn
access.
drinking a beer, you can't be arrested. In fact,
if you're standing next to your 10 cars and you found
yeah, I mean, and I think, look, the goal with all this, and you can correct me, the goal with all this is to provide our local law enforcement with as robust of a framework as possible. And my discussions with Chief Alberti is that none of this is black and white.
Mhm.
It just adds to the ability of the officers to provide discretion. And so the fine is up to and including. They don't have to get fined at all, right?
Right.
So the school
So-
zone thing doesn't mean that they're going to get nailed with a $300 fine. It just means that, like, hey, what were you doing? You're sitting
Right.
you're sitting in the Maple School parking lot drinking a 40.
Yeah, that's not smart.
Yeah, that's not smart.
And I think this is a follow-up to the city council and the subcommittee at the time around ordinance for cannabis.
Uh-huh.
Because one of the things that came out of those discussions was, we are not going to tolerate, anything that's going to be in violation of the law.
Right.
And we're going to legislate to make sure that that's done. So I think it's a good bookend down the road after we see what the CCC does.
Yeah.
I think it's a good bookend to what the council did with regard to cannabis
Sure.
ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I'm not opposed to it, just so you know.
Yeah.
I think that one of my lenses after, being on ordinance for as long as I have is, the enforceability of actual ordinance.
Mhm.
And that 350 feet seems like a difficult piece of it for me,
Mhm.
because it's kind of subjective. Unless you have a laser measure, like,
No,
I mean.
that's what we do. We actually do a laser measure. Like, this is no different to me than the school zone budget.
Okay.
We actually go out there with a wheel,
Mhm.
wheel out where the person was, or we have a laser measure. We take laser out, and we measure where a person was in proximity to the school.
Okay.
I think that, so when I wrapped my head around this, that was my thought process.
Yeah, there's already a framework for it.
And the other thing too, from a messaging standpoint, it goes back to, those council meetings where we all sat through, and messaging to the schools, and messaging, we're not bringing these to new schools, we're not bringing them to new
Right.
schools. And, then we go through this whole process with all of our children.
Yep.
I think this is some good messaging back
Sure.
too.
And that's a lot where this came from, was
Yeah.
sitting in those hearings and having people concerned about, use around youth and things like that. And on the one hand, we know that we fully support legal retail, but we don't support, unreasonable public use or exposure
Hi,
to kids.
excuse me. We're supposed to have the room at 7 o'clock. for
Oh.
Oh, are you?
cultural
Right.
meeting. We don't mind waiting a little bit, but I
No,
just want to
no,
make
it's
sure we
fine.
didn't get a message.
Perfect timing.
We need to wrap up anyway.
Wrap
so
up,
thanks
take your
for
time. No
being the
worries.
catalyst.
So this is just the alcohol one. I would move to send this to the council unless you have
Okay.
objections.
I don't.
This,
The alcohol piece of it.
So,
this one right here.
correct. This is a variety of amendments to section 612, which includes both changing the language as well as adding section D, which is open container vehicle, and then amending the fine structure.
And so this would have to be public hearing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which
No,
would
I think
be-
two-thirds
I'm
maybe.
not in any sort of rush to set that
All right.
up. But I would make a
So
motion.
you want to vote on this tonight?
Yeah.
Just-
I feel, is this the copy I've had all along? Or is
Yes.
this a revised
Yes.
copy?
This is the only
Copy I have seen.
Has there? I
The
don't
other
think
one
there.
was canvas.
There have been no changes to this one. This is unchanged.
And
From-
you've read it?
Yeah, can I ask a council question, you know, council? Because there is no agency to this, do you think it'd be better to push them both through? I know they've been sitting in the subcommittee forever.
But don't we want to? You mean you want to delay putting the segments forward? You mean?
Well, I think the council from Coniff is gonna tell you, I gotta reread this thing. And, and I'm just thinking,
I was not prepared to vote on this.
should
Okay.
we send them through together? Does that make sense?
That's fine, but then we'll have to wait. You're just talking about waiting until the summer.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any agency, I mean, a lot of.
It's fine with me.
A lot of this is going to be summer issues anyway.
Well, and
Yeah.
you're cleaning up language.
Yeah.
I mean, the ordinance is already on the books. It's just, Councilor Zare did a really good job of cleaning the draft and adding to the point.
I had some help.
Where we can basically generate revenue back in the city. Because we can still enforce what's on the books.
Right. I mean,
I'm fine with
I
that.
don't have any problem. I don't have any.
I'm good with that.
Is
I
there-
would feel
So-
better about that.
Okay.
Yeah, what's the language about tabling? How do we table this then?
So
we keep
just,
it on the
we don't
agenda.
even have to move to table.
Okay.
We just keep it on the
Or
agenda.
continue it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
As I
Good.
look in our
All right.
eyes.
Sounds good. All right. Well,
I
how
mean,
about
you-
Pay you later.
thanks for coming.
All right. So.
Thank you,
All
Becky.
right. Well, thank you for your consideration.
No, I think it's great. I
And,
think it'll be
I
good.
guess I'll make-
Thanks for dealing with my questions.
They're good questions. I
Okay.
make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay. All those in favor?
Bye.
All right.
Are you-